everybody, Kennis Russell here. I hope you're doing great. Today I'm taking a look at these new speakers from Martin Audio. These are the BlacklineX Series speakers. Check it out. So I'm taking a look at the BlacklineX series from Martin Audio, and I'm really excited about it because I've been testing these out for the last few weeks, and I'm excited to give my feedback and honest opinion about the quality and the functionality of these speakers. If you haven't heard of Martin Audio before, that's because Martin Audio traditionally has done a lot bigger setups than the kind of speakers I'm looking at right now. I'm talking about $100,000 line array systems and just big stadium systems for like massive amounts of people. But they're getting into more of the prosumer, not necessarily the entry-level musician, but kind of right in there of where instead of spending tens and tens of thousands of dollars, you can spend a couple $1,000s and have a really nice setup. And that's what the BlacklineX series is all about. So I've got 3 different speakers that I've been able to test out. This is their 12-inch speaker. This is called the XP12, the XP15, which if you haven't guessed is a 15-inch speaker, and then the XP18s, which are their subs. Let me say, I've tested a lot of stuff out before. I've listened to a lot of different speakers, a lot of different audio equipment, and I'm really impressed with what Martin Audio has done with these speakers in this BlacklineX series. So let me just kind of give you an overview of my experience, and then I'll get into the details of these speakers. So like I said, I've been testing them out for about 3 weeks, and I've used 2 main different scenarios in which I've tested them. This room right here is the youth room of our church, and we set this up and just use the tops, these 2 tops here, the 12-inch speakers, put them on stands, and that was what we used for our small band. This would be what would be considered kind of like a coffee shop setting. You know, there's a couch in here, there's tabletops, there's video games, that kind of thing. So it's not where there's rows and rows of people, it's more of a relaxed environment. So it really emulated well what you would expect in a coffee shop setting, this room does. And these 2 tops, we played with my acoustic guitar, my vocal, 1 other vocal singing, a bass acoustic guitar, and then a keyboard. So those 5 things going into a mixer, going into these speakers, and it performed very, very well. And these did a really good job. I boosted the treble and the EQ just a little bit, just to get a little bit more clarity, but I was actually using also a very inexpensive mixer. And even though that mixer's preamps are not very good at all, it still had a very usable sound coming from these speakers. Which leads me to the second scenario in which I use these, and this is really where they shined. There is a local music studio in my area that teaches music lessons. I'm a friend of the owner. And so for the last number of years, he's asked to use our church for his recitals twice a year. So I said, yeah, of course you can use it again, but I'm gonna set up these speakers instead of using our main system, you know, which was a lot more expensive than these guys are. I said, I'm gonna set these guys up and see what they will do in a bigger room, in a scenario where maybe you're playing to a few hundred people rather than, you know, 30 or 40 people. So I put these up on the stage, the 2 subs at the bottom, and I just set these 15s up on top of them and then use the 12s for monitors. Let me just say that it performed flawlessly. I was very impressed with how good these speakers sounded. I was using the Behringer XR18 as that rack unit as my mixer, using a computer to control the levels, and it just sounded great. These are the kind of instruments that were playing at the recital: bass guitar, electric guitar, acoustic guitar, vocals, violin, keys. There was probably more even than that playing. And what was great, drums. We mic'd up the kick drum of a drum set, and everything sounded really good and very clear coming through on these speakers. And to me, that's one of the things that I find is important in a audio system, no matter what it is, whether you're talking about the mixer or the speakers or, you know, anything in the signal chain, is how clear is everything coming across. Not just how loud is everything or how bassy was it or whatever the case is. You know, sometimes people have different things they're looking for. For me, I want to hear what that instrument is playing. And I want it to come across in my ears where I'm not having to work at hearing what's being played and what I'm supposed to hear. and everything came across great. The mics sounded great, the keyboard sounded great, guitars. And they had recitals all day long, 150 students playing at this recital. So it was an all-day event from 10 a.m. till 6 p.m. And he said one of the things that really impressed him was there was a bass player, he just plugged directly in. He said as he was playing, it just sounded really, really good, and he wasn't expecting that coming from this sound system. He said everything was clear, it was punchy, it was bassy, but it wasn't boomy. It was exactly what he would want to hear from a bass guitar. And then he also said that the kick drum setup sounded great. Now he's a drummer, and he's super picky on his kick drum sound. And so he was like, man, this sounds great. And it was just one of like a fusion set, a small kick drum. But when it's mic'd up, these subs made it really, really punchy and it sounded great. A couple of the things that I liked about that setup was in these, I'll show you how to do this in a second, but in the setup, you're able to tell it that you're able to say, I'm playing with the subwoofer, and then this is the top in the back panel, if you're connecting this speaker to a sub. So I was able to say, yes, I'm connecting this to a sub, and then it rolls off, automatically rolls off the frequencies that should be sent to the subwoofer. And in fact, you can go in there and tell it whether on the sub, whether you're hooking it up to an XP12 or an XP15. Same thing, these are basically the same speakers. One's just a 12-inch, one's just a 15-inch, but the back end of this and the amplifier in here is the same. Then I was able to go into the 12 inches and put those down as monitor wedges and use that for the monitors, and go into the back end of this and say this is actually a monitor and not a main speaker. And what that does is it rolls off a little bit more of the bass frequencies and gives you a really clear monitor, which is great. You don't need every frequency coming at you in a monitor like you would in a main speaker going, front of house. I really, really like the functionality of that you're able to say, yes, I could have this alone, or I could have this alone, but I could use this as a monitor, or I could pair this with a subwoofer. So there's a lot of functionality happening with that. Now, let me tell you a little bit about the construction and this menu back here and what things you can do with it, because it does some really nice things that I really wasn't expecting, and just very nice features. First of all, the construction of these guys is top notch. Like I said, the Martin Audio is a company that has traditionally been for more higher end speaker systems, and the same engineers that worked on those systems engineered this system here, the BlacklineX series. A couple things, just from an aesthetic look, this checks all the boxes for me. The front grille is nice. It's hard, like it's not a cheap metal. Sometimes speakers will have a metal that you can just push in with your thumb. This is nice and hard, so it's not going to be dinging up if you're using this in a mobile setting, whether it's a mobile church or a DJ setting or whatever the case is. This is going to function well as far as holding up over time. One thing that I do like about it too is it doesn't have a LED on the front. It does not have an LED on the front. I don't know what it is, but every time that I get a set of speakers and it'll have an LED on the front, I always go into the menus and I turn off the LED, or I'll put a piece of black tape over it, because I can't stand having that bright LED shine on the front. It just seems honestly kind of cheap to me, but it's nice that they don't even have that option of the LED, because it just seems a little bit higher end. The sides here have this wonderful handle that is built into the cabinet itself. Instead of putting an additional handle on the outside, or like a plate that has a handle built into it, it's built into the wood itself. And these are very easy to carry. They're very ergonomic. It's not a problem. I've held these with just one hand. I've held them with both hands. It's got handles on the subs that are very, very similar to this top one here. They're very easy to carry. The material that's on the outside of the plywood, and yes, it is a plywood cabinet. This is not a plastic cabinet. This is a wood cabinet. The finish that's on this is kind of reminds me of that finish that sometimes people put on the beds of a truck to keep it from scraping. This is not going to scrape off. This is, you could rub some things up against this, bang these up a little bit. These are not going to be coming off anytime soon. I can just tell from the material of this. I could probably take my knife here and scrape it up if I wanted to, and then this isn't going anywhere. Rather than it being a Tolex or some sort of fabric or carpet, it's this paint of some sort that's on here that's just very, very nice and just screams high end. It just screams that it looks good. Also, I don't know if you can tell from this angle, but there's a wedge here on the side, that a little angle that allows you to use this as a monitor wedge. And it's actually at a really good angle. I've had some speakers before that the angle that they sit at is too much, where it's not really shooting up at you. It's just kind of just hitting your knees. And this is a pretty good angle on there. I'm very, very happy with the way they did it. It's got an angle on both sides, so no matter what side you put it on, you have a nice wedge. And like I said, being able to pair this or tell this inside here that this is a monitor, it just increases the functionality of this. So on the tops here, the 12-inch speakers and the 15-inch speakers, these guys are basically the same amplifier inside here. So this has a 1300 watt amplifier. Both the 15 and the 12 have a 1300 watt amplifier. That's a lot of wattage, especially in a 12-inch speaker. I mean, I'm pretty impressed with that. So basically the amp inside here is the same amp. The only difference between these two is this is a 15-inch speaker and the cabinet's a little bit bigger. This is a 12-inch speaker and the cabinet's a little bit smaller than the 15 is. But other than that, they have the same exact functionality to it. And both of these, like I said, can be paired with the XP18 subwoofer. Now the sub is 2000 watts. 2000 watt subwoofer. And so, you know, on one side, if you had 1300 plus 2000, you got 3300 watts on each side, 6600 watts if you have two sides of these in your venue. That is a lot of wattage. It tells me a couple things. Number one, it's going to be able to obviously blast you to smithereens if you wanted to do that, because that is just a ton of power in these systems. But also it gives you the headroom. You know, you don't want to run your amps where they're peaking. You don't get good quality audio with that. What this allows you to do is it allows you, plenty of headroom in the amp where there's not any distortion, there's not anything but clear music coming from the speakers. Instead of it pushing it to the limit just to get the volume that you want. It's nice that these, having 6600 watts on each side, that's a massive amount of power for your system. I don't think that, you know, if you're playing for a few hundred people, that you're going to be pushing these beyond their limits anytime soon. And because there's so many watts in those amps, you're able to get a very clear, crisp sound coming from it. At that recital that I referred to back at the beginning, my friend that owns the business that does the recitals, his dad came in to come set up, and I was testing out the system. You know, I was putting everything on the monitors, and I had this little laptop that I was playing just through the laptop, testing the audio. I did a frequency sweep, 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz, you know, just making sure that everything was coming through. Was playing some music that was kind of high fidelity music that was very crisp and clear. And he was walking around. I kind of noticed him walking around, and then he came up to me and said, "Hey, are you testing the system, or what are you doing?" I said, "Yeah, we got these new speakers, testing them out, seeing how they do." And he said, "Man, they sound really, really clear. Like I can hear all the frequencies. Nothing is standing out as being too boomy or too crisp or too shrieky or anything like that. I can just, everything sounds like it's right there. It's crisp in your ears." That was what I was experiencing too. Well, it turns out I talked to my friend, his son, the next day, and he said, for my dad to come up to you and say that they sounded crisp, he's not the type of person that just offers feedback and compliments easily like that. He said if he came up to you and said, "Man, I just wanted to let you know those sound really, really good," that means they were very good. His personality is the type that doesn't just hand out compliments. So it was nice for me to have another person that was kind of completely out of the picture of testing this, have that feedback that these sounded really, really good. And then there was a few other people that coming in and out that they said, "Hey man, this sounded really good." These speakers, from my experience and from the people that have heard them, that I trust, these sound amazing. I'm very, very impressed with what they're able to do. The technology that is coming up is really, really good. And Martin Audio has done a great job of integrating technology into their speakers, making them smart speakers, not just, you know, kind of speakers you plug up and you have to have a mixer, you have to have different things in order to get them to sound good. So leads me to the back panel of these. The back panel of all three of these are the same in the way that they're configured. It's got a knob that you're able to scroll through, and it pushes also to indicate that you're selecting what you're scrolling through. It's actually a 3-channel mixer on the back of each one of these speakers. You've got a channel 1, a channel 2, and then a Bluetooth speaker, or a Bluetooth connection, I should say, and turns this into a Bluetooth speaker. Here's a scenario which you might come into, is that you'd have maybe your guitar plugged into channel 1, say you're in a coffee shop, and microphone plugged into channel 2, and instead of having to have your own separate mixer that you're plugging into, you can plug directly into these. And you don't have to have, like I said, another mixer happening. That's a great functionality that you're able to do. And then on the back of this, you can turn up and down the volumes of each of those channels. Not only can you turn up and down the volumes, but you can go into it and set up the EQ. Another thing that it'll do is it's got this mix out, and so you can go mix out into another speaker. So instead of coming out of a board where you have to have you know, a left and a right, you could go into this and then just go mix out into the other one. So you could have a pair producing the same sound. Again, without a mixer, be able to use, you know, 2 inputs, guitar and mic, whatever the case is, keyboard and mic, and then plug it up to another one. On the sub, it's got the same exact back panel as the other two, and you can go mix out of the sub into this one here. So you go into the sub and then out of the sub into this speaker here. So they're able to connect very, very well with each other. But what I really like is that it has Bluetooth connectivity. So when you go in here, you can have channel 1, channel 2, and Bluetooth all mixed on the back panel here. Now the Bluetooth was super easy to set up. I was able to go into my phone and connect it to one of the speakers. Also, in the back of this, you're able to connect the speakers Bluetooth to each other. So what happens is you connect wirelessly to the speaker, and then you tell the speakers to connect to each other, and you have this stereo image wirelessly Bluetooth streaming from your phone or your computer or your iPad or whatever it is that you're streaming. So this would come in really, really handy. Like I used it in our youth group setup where, yes, the band was plugged up here to a mixer, but I had a Bluetooth device streaming our audio before our youth service began. So the music that's happening, I didn't have to have, you know, a phone or something hooked up to this or hooked up to the mixer. I was able to just Bluetooth stream it to the speakers. That is a very, very nice functionality to have. I can see DJs using this a lot. You know, if a DJ was setting up for a wedding or whatever the case is, you know, you could set your speaker way over on the sides if you're using a Bluetooth device to stream to it and not have to worry about running cables. Or even if you were a band and you had everything set up, you know, before the show started, you just wanted to play background music, rather than it coming from the mixer, you could use your phone to pull up your background music or an iPad or whatever Bluetooth device. That's what I mean when I say the technology that Martin Audio is putting into this is top of the line. It's like the next level of technology. Also, it's not out yet, but according to their brochure, they're having an app that's going to come out soon too, where I'll be able to hook it up, the app, to these speakers, and I'll be able to EQ and mix from that. So I'd be able to go into each channel and EQ it and mix the levels as well of all 3 of these channels from my phone, which is really, really nice. You know, overall from top to bottom, I'd say if you're looking at a situation where you're playing in a small coffee shop where you want nice crystal clear sound, that would be great. These are gonna do it. To playing at like that recital in our main sanctuary of our church that we hosted that in, there's 250 seats out, and it had no problem filling the room with crystal clear sound. And honestly, I didn't even take the time. I put the speakers at a place where it was just easy for me to get to. I didn't even, you know, properly hang them or anything. They were just kind of sitting on the stage. I put up the sub, and on top of the sub, I put up this 15, and, you know, just roughly aimed it. I didn't have time to really tune it to the room, and they still sounded really, really good. Martin Audio has hit a home run with this series, the BlacklineX series. I'm really excited to have these in my arsenal of things that I can use. We do a setup every few months where we go, we have a patio at our church. These are gonna be awesome to take out on the back patio and have, you know, luncheons out there and be able to blast music. I can blast it from my phone and have good sound out there. Like I said, in the youth room setup, these are gonna be awesome. I'm gonna use them for retreats, when we go on retreats. As I have them, I'm thinking of ways that I'd be able to use them in different scenarios. So I gotta say, BlacklineX, Martin Audio, this is a great series that you have put together, and I think that most people that are looking at speakers in this price range, you're probably not going to find much that is going to outdo these speakers. And for the price, they're actually very, very good. I don't know if prices will change or what have you, but this was $1,000 for the 12-inch. $1,200 for the 15-inch and $1,300 for the subs. That's basically this 12-inch with the sub, $4,600 you would have a sub and tops. For $5,000 you'd have sub and tops with these, and for an extra $2,000 use these as your monitors. So basically $7,000 and you've got a killer system. So if you were going into, you know, a lot of churches start out mobile church, this would be awesome in a mobile church setting. I'm excited about Martin Audio getting in more of the lower end price range, but using their high-end technology and engineers to design them. But they definitely have my stamp of approval. Martin Audio, the BlacklineX series. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully this video is helpful to you in making your decision on whether you should buy this series of BlacklineX speakers or not. Kennis Russell out, and I'll see you in another video.